Story 1. On September 22nd, 2023, Suzanne Morphew's remains were discovered 3 years after her sudden disappearance on May 10th, 2020. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation stumbled upon her remains during a search of an area in Moffett, Saguacho County. As part of a separate investigation, breathing new life into the famously cold case of Suzanne Morphew's disappearance. A tumultuous personal life and an inconsistent recollection of events first pointed toward the husband as the likely suspect in what the police believe to be a murder. However, new evidence has called into question the 2-year-long crusade. Over 70 investigators invested 1,000 hours of work into Suzanne's case. 135 search warrants were issued, and dozens of over 400 people were interviewed before the police felt confident in charging Barry with the first-degree murder of his wife. Even after the charges were dropped based on inadequate evidence and mismanagement, there was no doubt in most people's eyes that Barry was guilty. However, after Suzanne's remains were found 50 miles outside their search area, and DNA evidence linked her death to a suspected serial killer, questions have arisen about what happened on the day of her disappearance. Is Barry Morphew far more resourceful than the authorities give him credit for? Or did something or someone from her personal life cause her death? Suzanne Morphew was born on April 11, 1971, to her parents, Jean and Adrian Alexandria, and grew up with 2 brothers, David and Andrew. Everyone who knew Suzanne described her as an amazing, intellectual, and thoughtful friend. In 1998, while in high school, Suzanne met her future husband, Barry Morphew, and married him after 6 years of dating. Matthew was a remarkable ball player and was signed with the Toronto Blue Jays while Suzanne pursued a degree in education at Purdue University. Barry's career ended before it barely began after a serious injury, and he switched tracks, beginning a career in horticulture. Suzanne had been teaching for 4 years when Barry started his landscape company, which gained steam as more time passed. Together, the couple had 2 children, Mallory and Macy. They had a picture-perfect life in Indiana until Suzanne was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. She beat cancer twice, and in 2018, the Morphews moved to Maysville, Colorado, for a fresh start and to be closer to their daughter Mallory, attending Western State University. They moved to a gorgeous 7-acre property where Barry could hunt. He still worked as a contractor and had even taken up being a volunteer fireman while Suzanne retired from teaching, devoting herself more to the church and taking up sports. Mountain biking was a new pastime she was exploring. From the outside looking in, the Morphews were the perfect family. But they had their share of problems, all of which would come to light following the events of May 10th, 2020. May 10th, 2010, started a bit differently from most Mother's Day celebrations at the Morphews' residence. Barry and the girls were out of the house, leaving Suzanne alone in their home. Barry claimed to have a landscaping appointment in the town of Broomfield, 3 hours away from Maysville by car. The girls, on the other hand, went on a camping trip. Barry and the girls had planned to return home by the evening to celebrate Mother's Day with Suzanne. However, the planned celebration never took place. That evening, the girls messaged their mother to wish her happy Mother's Day but received no text message in return. They found this odd since their mother was very active on social media, expecting a few pictures from her best friend's daughter's wedding. They knew she had to be on her phone. After a few hours of no reply, Mallory and Macy reached out to their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife to check on Suzanne. Mrs. Ritter made the trip down to the Morphews' house around 4 o'clock to 4:30 p.m. to discover an empty house. She called Barry, explaining the situation, and he told her to check for Suzanne's mountain bike. If it was not there, he instructed her to call the police, and that's exactly what she did. The police showed up at the Morphew residence, and Barry Morphew and his 2 daughters made their way back home, desperate to learn the location and status of Suzanne. The police found their first solid clue a few hours into the search. The discovery turned the investigation on its head. Two deputies found Suzanne's mountain bike off a steep ravine, not too far from Morphew's home. The location suggested that Suzanne might have likely been in a crash, but the bike itself and the surrounding vegetation did not indicate signs of a struggle. There were no skid marks indicating she used the brakes on her bike. No damage to the mountain bike itself, despite tumbling down the side of a ravine, no blood, and the vegetation in the area hadn't been disturbed. The deputies deduced it was obviously placed there by somebody. When they presented Barry with this information, he had a bizarre reaction. Barry's odd mountain lion theory would be the first of many outlandish stories, conclusions, and accounts that he would provide the investigators while they searched for his wife. Several people found Barry's handling of his wife's disappearance odd, to say the least. In a secretly recorded conversation with YouTuber Tyson Draper, he went into further detail about his mountain lion story. Barry was also absent from the search parties organized by Suzanne's brother Andrew. He didn't believe Barry's story about the bike ride and suggested that she might have been taken on May 9th instead of Mother's Day. Suspicion eventually shifted to him when Suzanne's helmet was found 1 mile away from the Morphew's home, in the exact direction that Barry's truck telemetry showed he'd taken that morning. Investigators might have written it off as an odd coincidence if it was not in the exact opposite direction of the Broomfield construction site he was set to visit that day. In the preliminary interview he gave the officers, he claimed to have been woken up by his alarm clock around 4:30 a.m. and left straight for Broomfield. Yet, the telematic data from his Ford F-350 showed that he'd driven 1 mile west before heading to the construction site. When Barry was confronted with the data gathered, Barry provided a convenient explanation. He claimed to have been scouting elk earlier that morning at around 4:30 a.m. and was curious to see which direction they were headed so that he could track them down later. Apparently, Barry had a habit of tranquilizing elk and removing their antlers for sale. When the officers pointed out that he couldn't have spotted the elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was supposed to be just waking up, he amended his story to say that he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. and got up alone. When he was questioned specifically about the day of her disappearance, he said the day was one of the best the couple had had in some time. Barry said he was working with a coworker in Salida that morning. He returned early, went on a hike with Suzanne, and then they grilled up some steak and were intimate. He said they went to bed together and suggested that it could have been the last time they saw each other. But as we've established, Barry is not the most reliable witness. When the police started to investigate Barry, they found out that he had lied about just about everything that happened that night. The investigators first knew something was wrong when they went through Barry's phone and vehicle telematic data on May 9, 2020. While Barry and Suzanne Morphew did spend the afternoon and evening together, the events didn't align with Barry's narrative. At 2.42 to 2.44, the first significant deviation from Barry's account surfaced. His phone data revealed erratic movements around the property. When confronted by investigators, he said that he was likely hunting chipmunks with tranquilizers. At 2:47 p.m., Barry switched his phone to airplane mode, maintaining it until 10:17 p.m. Even the steak dinner he claimed to have shared with his wife was thrown into doubt. Investigators found only one dirty dish instead of two, and later that night, more peculiarities emerged on the Morphew property. The police noted additional concerning details during their scrutiny of the data from later that night. At 9:30 p.m., an hour after Barry claimed to have gone to sleep with his wife, his car reversed, moving 96 feet backward from the driveway. Investigators speculated this might have been when he loaded her body onto his truck if he was guilty. From 3.25 to 3.48, the records indicated that the door to his truck opened and closed over 80 times. Though circumstantial, the evidence hinted at information Barry wasn't sharing with the police, prompting a closer look into the events of May 10th. Interviews with coworkers revealed that Barry was not supposed to be in Broomfield that day. Their contract wasn't set to begin until a week later, meaning there was no project to inspect. According to Barry, he only visited the Holiday Inn, the job site, a local store for granola and water, and briefly stopped at McDonald's to clean his windshield. However, surveillance footage obtained by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation contradicted his account. Barry was observed disposing of 5 trash bags near McDonald's and the Holiday Inn. When confronted with the footage, Barry provided an odd reason for his disposal method, claiming he wanted to clean his car without incurring proper disposal fees. Naturally, Barry's explanation unraveled when officers inspected his car. A coworker also reported a strong smell of bleach and chlorine in Barry's hotel room a day after Suzanne's disappearance. Furthermore, investigators discovered that Barry changed his clothes multiple times throughout the day. As damaging as Barry's actions might seem, investigators had discovered no motive. That changed when they looked deeper into their personal lives. Barry and Suzanne's daughter revealed that both of them were not exactly as happy as Barry would like the police to believe. The text messages they discovered when they recovered Suzanne's phone and personal belongings from the house proved it. To say they were having marital problems would be an understatement. She was deeply unhappy in the marriage and talked about how her husband would not even consider divorce. In her notes app, she kept a list of grievances that paint a pattern of physical abuse. Suzanne even mentioned that she was afraid to be alone in a room with him. She was also worried about his drinking, repeated attempts to seize her phone, and even speculated that he was unfaithful to her. When the police stormed the Morphew house on May 20th, they discovered a pen that Suzanne had purchased to catch her husband in the act. Ironically, it recorded her affair, not his. Her lover was a man named Jeff, whom Suzanne went to high school with. The affair had allegedly gone on for 1.5 years, starting around 2018. While Jeff sounded like an obvious suspect, the police were able to clear him of any involvement. Investigators believed that Barry somehow found out about the affair, and a note Suzanne wrote 2 days before her disappearance corroborated their theory. Barry had accused her of having a boyfriend. The spy pen, while instrumental, was not the only vital piece of information they uncovered in their search of the Morphew house. They found the cap of a tranquilizer dart in the family's dryer, a spent bullet casing in the bedroom, a large crack in the door frame, and what they believed to be the remnant of Suzanne's journal in the fireplace. All of these findings, combined with the telematic data, suggested that Barry might have planned the murder of his wife and killed her sometime in the afternoon of May 9, 2020. The phone data from Suzanne's phone corroborated that story. After texting her boyfriend 53 times and sending him a selfie at around 2:10 p.m., she never used it again. The public did not learn that Barry was a suspect in his wife's disappearance until 2 weeks later, when the police carried out a 2-day excavation of a construction site in Salida, which was one of Barry's job sites. In response to that, Barry released an odd video to the public, declaring his innocence. Barry Morphew was not arrested until May 5, 2021, nearly a year since the investigation had begun. The evidence against Barry was circumstantial at best, but with the changing stories, repeated lies, and clear motive, the prosecution seemed confident in their case. Barry was charged with the first-degree murder of his wife, tampering with physical evidence, possession of a dangerous weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. As if all that was not bad enough, Barry was also charged later on with filing a fraudulent election ballot in Suzanne's name. He claimed that he didn't know it was wrong and that Trump could use the extra vote. Barry pled guilty to the charge and paid a $600 fine. In August 2021, a preliminary hearing was held to decide if Barry Morphew's case would go to trial, and it was during this time that most of the information regarding the case became public knowledge. Over 4 days, The prosecution slowly presented the evidence they gathered and postulated what they thought might have happened. Barry killed his wife on May 9, 2020, took her body apart in a hotel room, disposed of the tools used, and buried her body in an unmarked grave. Barry's defense, however, pushed back hard, poking holes in the prosecution's story. They pointed to the fact that cadaver dogs could not find any signs of human remains in Barry's car and the hotel room where he supposedly brought her body. They also alluded to the fact that the dart bullet cover might have been planted. There were visual inconsistencies in the pictures taken of the dryer. One showed that the cap was in the dryer, and another showed that it wasn't. The defense also stated that it would have been impossible for Barry to have used his dart gun to aid in the alleged murder since it was broken at the time. However, the defense team's smoking gun was the partial DNA they discovered in Suzanne's Range Rover and on her bike helmet, none of which matched Barry. What made the discovery such a big deal was that the DNA found in her car matched the ones found in 3 unsolved sexual assault investigations in Chicago and Arizona, raising reasonable doubt. Why was this not brought up earlier? The CBI investigator who collected the evidence went on military leave before he could follow up on the lead. To make matters worse, the defense was never informed of the existence of the foreign DNA matches. They were learning about it for the first time during that hearing, meaning the prosecution withheld exculpatory evidence that could have aided the defense. Throughout the hearing, the defense argued that with the existence of another suspect with a criminal record, the prosecution did not have enough evidence to prove that Barry should be convicted of the killing of his wife. They asked the judge to rule quickly on his decision, but oddly, he delayed his decision, citing the hundreds of man-hours and resources put into the case. It wasn't until September 7th that the judge decided that the case would move forward and set Barry's bail at $500,000. Barry walked out of county jail with his daughters on September 20th, 2021. 9 days before the trial was set to begin, the prosecution filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice. What this means is that the prosecution is free to restart the case at any point, pending new information. Without a body of reasonable doubt on whether Barry committed the murder and misconduct on the part of the prosecution, it would have been a hard win. The prosecution also missed several deadlines, which earned them sanctions that excluded 14 key witnesses from the trial. The world was shocked when news broke of the dismissal, and Barry could be seen exiting the courthouse with a big smile on his face and his 2 daughters with him. On September 22, 2023, a group of investigators dug up several shallow graves located in Moffett, Colorado, following an investigation. Suzanne's remains were identified with her dental records and chemotherapy port over 50 miles away from the projected search area, which was the mountains surrounding Barry's property. With the discovery of her body, people question if Barry could still be technically considered a suspect in the murder, since the police are certain that Barry's truck was not in Moffett on the 9th and 10th of May. Some people have pointed out that Barry could have had help in disposing of her body, and he could have made the trip to Moffett to bury the body and head back. Perhaps if they got a subpoena for his phone and car data for a longer period, they might be able to link him to where Suzanne's remains were discovered. But for now, Barry seems to be in the clear. However, the police and district attorney's office have not thrown in the towel yet. The district attorney of the 12th Judicial District told CNN that the case is still under investigation, and she would not be able to comment until more information is known, but they did offer their condolences to Suzanne's family. Iris Etienne, Barry's attorney, has been very vocal since the body has been recovered, hinting that it's more likely that Suzanne was one of the many victims of a serial killer since her remains were discovered in a boneyard. She believes that Barry was wrongfully targeted by law enforcement and hopes that they might eventually admit that they were wrong. In the meantime, Barry has begun a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff stations, and many investigators, claiming he was wrongfully charged in the disappearance and death of his wife. Story 2. Lauren Hugelmeyer first met Matt Phelps when they were in middle school, although they were not particularly close friends at the time. However, years later, when both Lauren and Matt were 26 years old, something unexpected happened. Matt, who had not spoken to Lauren in a long time, reached out to her on Instagram. Curious about the unexpected request, Lauren accepted Matt's request and started following him back. Intrigued, Matt decided to take a closer look at Lauren's Instagram page. As he scrolled through her posts, he found himself liking each one. Something about Lauren's intrigued him, and he couldn't help but be drawn to her. As time passed, Lauren and Matt continued to text and talk on the phone daily. They discovered they had a lot in common, particularly their love for Harry Potter, Star Wars, and other geeky things. Their conversations were filled with laughter and shared interests, and their friendship quickly blossomed into something deeper. What made Matt particularly appealing to Lauren was his dedication to his faith. Lauren had grown up in a Christian household, and God was very important to her. She loved that Matt felt the same way, and she found solace in their shared beliefs and values. To the outside world, Lauren and Matt appeared to be a couple deeply in love with one another. Their relationship seemed filled with joy and happiness, leaving those around them to believe they had found their soulmates. It was only a matter of time before Matt decided to pop the question to Lauren. Dale, Lauren's father, was deeply protective of his daughter. He had always been concerned about her well-being and safety, and the thought of her getting married to someone he barely knew filled him with concern. After Lauren and Matt became engaged, their loved ones threw an engagement party to celebrate their exciting news. Lauren was thrilled and dressed to the nines in a stunning white dress. However, things at the party took an unexpected turn when Matt's mother arrived dressed in white, an apparent act of disrespect towards Lauren. It was evident to everyone that Matt's mother was not pleased with her son's decision to marry Lauren. Unable to contain her frustration and disappointment, Lauren approached Matt after the engagement party to confront him about his mother's behavior. However, Matt dismissed her concerns, stating that he had grown up with his grandparents rather than his parents. Matt went on to say that he did not have the best relationship with his mother and that what she thought did not matter to him. After becoming engaged, Lauren and Matt made the decision to relocate to Raleigh, North Carolina, in 2016. Despite the change of location, they remained committed to their Christian values and continued to live a life guided by their faith. Matt was employed at an in-home care company. His hard work and commitment were recognized, and he was named Employee of the Month. Lauren was incredibly proud of her husband's dedication and hard work. However, Lauren's contributions were just as significant. She worked diligently to support their life together, often taking up to 4 jobs simultaneously. In addition to her full-time job at a Fortune 500 company, Lauren found ways to contribute further to their financial stability. One of her side hustles involved babysitting. Additionally, she worked in the church nursery, taking care of children while their parents attended services. Furthermore, Lauren had a side business selling candles. Her entrepreneurial spirit led her to explore various opportunities, and she was determined to succeed in whatever endeavor she pursued. The idea of owning her own business held a particular allure for her, as it offered the potential for financial freedom and the opportunity to create something meaningful. Every Tuesday night, Lauren and Matt would make the trip to her parents' house for game night. It was a weekly event that they both looked forward to. Matt would always show up on time, eager to spend quality time with Lauren's family. He seemed to enjoy the opportunity to bond and connect with them. In November 2016, Lauren and Matt celebrated their love in a wedding ceremony in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Their special day was filled with joy, laughter, and a touch of their shared passion for nerdy things. One of the cutest touches that made the wedding memorable was incorporating some nerdy stuff Lauren and Matt love. The groomsmen, dressed in dapper suits, each held their lightsabers, transforming the wedding into a Star Wars-themed celebration. Shortly after Matt and Lauren married, cracks started to appear in their relationship. One of the main issues was Matt's discomfort with Lauren's close friendship with a male friend from church. Matt suspected this friend had feelings for Lauren and was concerned that their friendship was too close. Lauren, however, tried to reassure Matt that she felt nothing for this man and was committed to her marriage. Matt's trust issues were rooted in his past experiences with his first marriage. He revealed that his previous spouse cheated on him while she was on a mission trip. When she finally returned home, she informed him that she never loved him and was leaving him. The betrayal and abandonment left Matt deeply wounded and struggling for a long time. According to Matt, the impact of his first marriage was profound, and he described feeling messed up emotionally for a long time. As Lauren and Matt's marriage progressed, Matt seemed increasingly unhappy. His demeanor changed from being upbeat and content to a darker and more depressed state. He seemed stuck in a dark place, and it was evident that something was weighing heavily on him. Around this time, Matt's attitude towards his faith became increasingly distant. He seemed unhappy and disengaged from attending church services with his wife. This decision was a significant blow for Lauren, as her faith was paramount to her. She felt that her husband's unwillingness to share this aspect of her life with her was like a slap in the face. Lauren couldn't help but notice that Matt seemed to disregard whatever she cherished entirely. It was as if his love and appreciation had faded away, leaving a growing void in their relationship. Lauren longed for a deeper connection with her husband, built on shared values and interests, but Matt seemed disinterested. Matt started displaying signs of laziness that greatly irritated Lauren, who was working multiple jobs to support them. His pattern of finding a job, working there for a few weeks, and then abruptly quitting became a recurring issue that caused Lauren immense frustration. What particularly upset her was that Matt was spending their money at an alarming rate, leaving her struggling to earn it back. Lauren and Matt's friends and family members tried to pull him out of his depression, but their efforts seemed to fall on deaf ears. Instead of seeking help or engaging in meaningful activities, Matt would spend countless hours in front of the TV, engrossed in playing video games. This behavior affected his and Lauren's financial stability and strained their relationship. Lauren found herself in need of support due to Matt's unusual behavior and took action by contacting her mother and sister. Lauren opened up to them, sharing how exhausted she was working 4 jobs and how disheartening it was to come home from a long day and face a messy house, laundry waiting to be done, and food that needed to be prepared. Throughout, Matt seemed to prioritize playing video games and spending their money, leaving Lauren feeling neglected and overwhelmed. Despite the increasing distance between them and the strange behavior exhibited by Matt, Lauren remained committed to her marriage and was determined to make it work. Her dedication to their marriage was evident in her unwavering decision to stay by Matt's side despite the challenges they faced as a couple. She remained steadfast in her belief that their marriage was worth saving. Around the time when Lauren and Matt hit their 4-month wedding anniversary, their relationship was as strained as ever. One significant change that raised concerns was Matt's absence from Tuesday night game night at Lauren's family house. This decision hurt Lauren and her family and seemed intentional, as they saw it as a deliberate disrespect towards them. Lauren was feeling distant from Matt and knew that something needed to change. Lauren had tried to communicate her feelings and concerns, but it seemed Matt wasn't listening or didn't care. She was concerned that their marriage was drifting apart, and she didn't want to lose the love they once had. At that time, Lauren was desperate to save her marriage with Matt and was willing to do anything to make it work. So when Matt proposed that he and Lauren go on a road trip to Bowling Green, Kentucky, where his family lived, Lauren agreed. She thought getting away with Matt could benefit their strained relationship and hopefully get things back to how they used to be. When Lauren and Matt arrived in Bowling Green, Kentucky, they were met with a surprise. They decided to embark on a trip with Matt's mother, her husband, and his parents. However, things didn't turn out as expected. Despite arriving together, Matt's mother's feelings toward Lauren had not changed, and she continued to give her a chilly reception. Matt's mother maintained an icy demeanor throughout the trip, causing tension within the group. As the trip went on, Matt's mother arranged a photo shoot for the family, and she included Lauren. Lauren was excited to be included in an activity by her mother-in-law, hoping that this would mean a shift in their relationship. Several days before the photo shoot, Matt's mother texted Lauren that everyone would be wearing blue. Eager to follow the instructions, Lauren went shopping and bought 2 new blue outfits, one for herself and one for Matt. She was looking forward to wearing the outfit she had chosen and being included in the photo shoot. However, when they arrived at the designated location, they discovered that everyone except Lauren and Matt was wearing white. Confused and disappointed, Lauren turned to Matt's mother for an explanation. However, instead of acknowledging her mistake, Matt's mother acted upset with Lauren. She began to lash out, making it seem as if it was Lauren's choice to wear blue. Frustrated by the situation, Lauren tried to explain that she had followed instructions and bought blue outfits accordingly. However, Matt's mother continued to escalate the situation, throwing a fit and canceling the photo shoot altogether. When Lauren and Matt returned from Bowling Green, Kentucky, their relationship continued to deteriorate. Matt, spending an increasing amount of time alone writing in his journals, started displaying even more peculiar behavior. His behavior worried Lauren, as she observed changes in her husband's demeanor. Lauren began to suspect Matt was stealing money from the Disney fund the couple had set aside for their future trip to Disney World. Her suspicions were heightened when she discovered that Matt might have also taken money from her purse without her knowledge. Lauren would often call her mother crying during this time, when she suspected Matt of stealing money from their vacation fund and her purse. She once told her mother that she only had enough money to cover the bills for 1 month and didn't have any more. This revelation left Lauren anxious and afraid, as she knew she and Matt were facing a significant financial challenge. Less than a year before they started their life together, Lauren and Matt entered their marriage with $10,000 in savings, which they believed would be a solid foundation for their future. However, by this point in their marriage, Lauren and Matt had found themselves in financial instability. Despite their initial optimism, they had managed to deplete their savings significantly. Matt's excessive spending quickly drained their financial resources. One evening, Lauren arrived home from a long day of work and texted Matt about their dinner plans for that night. During the conversation, she also mentioned that a female coworker had visited their house earlier in the day. This woman's visit sparked concern in Lauren, given the strained state of her marriage to Matt. Lauren couldn't help but wonder if she should be nervous that a woman had sought out her husband at their home. Her unease grew as she contemplated the truth behind Matt's first marriage. Driven by her curiosity and a desire to uncover the truth, she decided to delve deeper into this matter. Matt and his first wife, Brooke Truitt, met in college and were college sweethearts. After dating for 2 years, Matt proposed to Brooke and they soon married. However, Brooke would later say that Matt cheated early in their relationship, and Matt confessed to Brooke he had kissed another girl. Although hurt, Brooke eventually forgave Matt. The second time Matt cheated on Brooke was right before they were married. That time, Matt begged Brooke for forgiveness, and she eventually forgave him and married him. After Matt and Brooke married, their relationship quickly became strained. Brooke later accused Matt of spending money on stuff they didn't have the money for. Meanwhile, she was the one working 40 hours a week to support them. The constant strain in their marriage took a toll on Matt and Brooke. Brooke's relationship. They grew distant and found themselves drifting apart emotionally. Eventually, Matt and Brooke divorced. In a shocking revelation, Lauren informed her parents that she discovered it was Matt, rather than his ex-wife, who cheated on his first marriage. Her family, filled with anger and a sense of betrayal, were afraid of what Lauren's protective father might do to Matt if they told him the truth. As a result, they remained silent and kept the news to themselves. As Lauren and Matt's marriage continued to deteriorate, Lauren's frustration with her husband grew exponentially. The discovery of yet another betrayal shattered their already fragile trust. Just when Lauren thought she could rebuild her faith in their marriage, she discovered that Matt had again broken her trust regarding their finances. Upon receiving their latest credit card statement, she found that Matt had splurged $1,200 on video games and another $1,100 on gift cards. These impulsive purchases, made without Lauren's knowledge or consent, only deepened her frustration and fueled her doubts about Matt's commitment to their marriage. Despite Matt's continuous breach of trust, Lauren was determined to do everything in her power to save her marriage. Divorce did not even enter Lauren's realm of possibilities, as she was committed to making things work. As a result, she decided to plan an intervention with her mother and sister to confront Matt about his excessive spending habits. During the intervention, Lauren, her mother, and her sister aimed to assist Matt in developing a plan to address his and Lauren's budget. Matt exhibited a positive outlook and genuinely desired to rectify his and Lauren's financial issues. He seemed genuinely committed to making positive changes in their marriage. On August 31st, 2017, the same woman who Matt used to work with suddenly appeared at Lauren and Matt's front door. Lauren was caught off guard and upset to see this woman, as things had been going so well between her and Matt. Matt informed Lauren that he was leaving with her, explaining that she needed his assistance with something. Lauren was furious with Matt for this decision and began frantically texting and calling him. However, Matt remained silent and did not answer her calls or texts. In her fury, Lauren turned to her sister and vented her frustrations. She expressed her belief that Matt was ruining her life and told her sister that it was over between them. Lauren also mentioned that she had informed Matt about her decision to end their relationship. In the early hours of September 1st, 2017, a 911 call came into a dispatcher, and on the other line was Matt Phelps. Matt told the dispatcher, "I think I killed my wife. I had a dream, and then I turn on the lights and she's dead on the floor. I have blood all over me, and there's a bloody knife on the bed, and I think I did it. She's not moving. Oh my God, I'm so scared. She didn't deserve this." His Matt was trembling with fear and panic as he spoke to the dispatcher. He sounded unsure of himself, his voice filled with shock and guilt. During the phone call with the 911 dispatcher, Matt explained the reason he might have killed his wife. According to Matt, he had taken Coristin cough and cold medicine and may have taken more than he should have. Matt stated that he took the Coristin medication because he knew it could provide relief and help him sleep better at night. Coristin is an over-the-counter medication commonly used to treat common cold and flu symptoms. It contains a combination of antihistamines, decongestants, and pain relievers, which relieve nasal congestion, cough, and sore throat. However, Coristin has also been associated with certain side effects, including drowsiness, dizziness, and confusion. These effects can be more pronounced when taken in large amounts or combined with other medications. Minutes after Matt called 911 to report that he had killed his wife, the Raleigh Police Department arrived at the scene of their home. Upon their arrival, they found Matt standing on the front steps. The officers promptly took him into custody, ensuring he was safe and secure. Once inside the house, the officers discovered a horrifying scene in the master bedroom. Lauren was found in the fetal position, lifeless, on the bedroom floor. This scene was gruesome, with blood splattered all over the carpet, walls, comforter, and bed. Even for the most seasoned police officers, the sight was deeply disturbing. The overwhelming amount of blood and Lauren's lifeless body painted a horrific picture. Crime scene investigators arrived to begin their meticulous task of collecting every piece of evidence. They meticulously examined every corner of the house, searching for clues that could provide insight into the events that unfolded that night. The investigators meticulously documented the scene, taking photographs, collecting samples, and gathering any physical items that appeared to be related to the crime. As the crime scene investigators continued their search for evidence in Matt and Lauren's house, police officers had to make the difficult decision to travel to Lauren's family house and inform them that their beloved daughter was dead. Upon knocking on the door, the officers received a response from Lauren's mom, who asked if there was anything wrong with Lauren. The officer somberly replied, "Yes, there is." With her heart pounding, Lauren's mom pressed further, asking if her daughter was dead. The officer once again answered, "Yes, she is." Overcome with emotion, she dared to ask the most important question. Did Matt kill Lauren? With a heavy heart, the officer confirmed her suspicion, uttering, "Yes, he did." After receiving the news that her mother had been killed by her husband, Lauren's sister was awoken by the sound of her mother's piercing screams. Filled with shock and horror, she raced down the stairs. Upon reaching the bottom of the steps, the police officers stood by the front door and confirmed her worst nightmare. Her sister was dead. At the police station, Matt was questioned by the police regarding his involvement in the murder of his wife, but Matt eventually decided to request an attorney. The questioning was halted once Matt made this request, and the police took action. They transported Matt to the hospital to undergo a blood test to determine if he was under the influence of quercetin at the time of the murder. Following the blood test, Matt was transported to the county jail, where he was arrested for murder. After Matt's arrest, the police conducted a thorough examination of his journals and electronic items to determine if they could find any additional evidence pointing towards his motive for murdering his wife. While searching through his internet records, the officers noticed a peculiar pattern in the weeks leading up to Lauren's death. Matthew had been researching topics related to coincidin and the effects of mixing it with alcohol. Police discovered the existence of a secret Instagram account belonging to Matt, where they found numerous posts related to death, the devil, and the infamous movie American Psycho. These posts depicted violent anti-Christian imagery that seemingly contradicted the public image Matt projected of himself. He portrayed himself as an aspiring pastor in public. The toxicology report for Matt came in, and it was revealed that he had a small amount of cold medication in his system. However, it was not at the toxic level that would have caused hallucinations. This discovery provided additional evidence supporting the argument that Matt was lucid and not under the influence of any substances at the time of Lauren's death. Lauren's autopsy report revealed she was asleep on her side when Matt entered the room and stabbed her. After stabbing her once on her side, Matthew proceeded to roll over Lauren and stabbed her multiple times in her face. The autopsy findings also indicated that Lauren fought to save her life. Several wounds were found on her arms, suggesting that she attempted to defend herself. In total, Lauren sustained 123 stab wounds. On October 5, 2018, Matthew Phelps pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of his wife Lauren. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During his sentencing hearing, Phelps addressed his former in-laws, expressing remorse and regret for his crime. Matt acknowledged what he had done, expressing his overwhelming feelings of guilt and shame. He referred to himself as a monster and emphasized that his actions were senseless and mindless, lacking any rational justification. Lauren's mother told the court, "Lauren was beautiful inside and out. The actions of Matthew James Phelps have forever changed me." Story 3. On May 24, 2019, Jennifer Dulos, a doting mother, was never seen again by her 5 kids and family. This shocking event threw the police into a deep investigation, which uncovered an even more shocking truth. Jennifer Dulos' disappearance had been caused by someone who had at a time been the center of her world. Jennifer Dulos was born on September 27, 1968, in New York City to Hillard Farber, a banker, and Glories Ortenberg, a philanthropist. Jennifer had just one sibling, her sister, Melissa Irene Farber. She studied at Brown University. She graduated in 1990. She got a master's degree in writing from New York University Tisch School of Arts. Jennifer's uncle, Arthur Ortenberg, and his wife founded a fashion company, Liz Clarebone Incorporated. In 2004, Jennifer Dulos got married to her heartthrob, Fotis Dulos. They had 5 children together, 2 sets of twins and a girl. They named them all after Greek saints: Theodore Doulos, Constantine Doulos, Petros Doulos, Christian Doulos, and Cleopatra Noel Doulos. Jennifer and her husband, Fotis Dulos, were united for 13 years until their marriage hit the rock in 2017. Jennifer had grown scared of the man she was once in love with. This brings the question, who was Fotis Dulos? And what had changed about him? Fotis Dulos was born on August 6, 1967, in Turkey. He grew up in Athens, Greece. Fotis moved to the United States of America in 1986. He studied at Brown University and graduated in 1989. A few years later, Fotis bagged a master's degree in finance at Columbia Business School. Fotis met his first wife, Hilary Vanessa Aldama, at Brown University. They had attended the same school. He married her in Athens in 2000. After their marriage crashed in 2004, Fotis moved to Connecticut. Dulos had married Jennifer in September 2004, a month after his divorce. He had been seeing Jennifer while he was still married to Vanessa Aldama. After their marriage, they moved to Farmington. Their union produced 5 children Jennifer Dulos adored with her life. That was what made the police suspicious when she disappeared. Jennifer would never intentionally abandon her children. Before her disappearance, Jennifer had filed for a divorce and was fighting for the sole custody of her kids. Her marriage to Fotis had gone so sour she had become terrified for her and her children's lives. The Dulos marriage hit rock bottom in 2017. Jennifer Dulos first hinted about her troubles in her marriage in a blog post on March 12, 2012. She shared how she wished she was a much stronger person, and confrontations did not scare and appalled her. In 2017, Jennifer Dulos filed for a divorce on the account that Fotis Dulos was increasingly living an independent life and cheating on her with his colleague, Michelle Tricons, a native of Venezuela. Jennifer Dulos filed for emergency custody of her 5 kids in 2017. Although the court denied her request, it granted her and Fotis Dulos shared custody. Jennifer Dulos was scared for her life, but most importantly, for the safety of her children. She claimed that her husband, Fotis Dulos, exhibited irrational, unsafe, bullying, threatening, and controlling behavior. She shared one of the unfortunate experiences she had suffered in Fotis' hands. On June 3, 2017, he had found out that she had planned activities for their children on a Saturday morning. It had not sat well with Fotis, so he lost control. According to Jennifer, he had become enraged and agitated. She was terrified and tried to get away from him by rushing upstairs. But Fotis followed all the way up, and even after she locked the door and bolted it so that she was trapped inside, he kept verbally attacking her and physically intimidated her. Jennifer Dulos knew she was not safe with her husband. She had invited trouble when she filed for a divorce. In an interview, she confessed that she was terrified of Fotis. She had admitted that her desire for a divorce had infuriated him, and he was going to retaliate by harming her in some way. Jennifer Dulos claimed that in May 2017, when she filed for a divorce, Fotis had threatened to kidnap and harm their kids if she refused to agree with his terms in the divorce settlement. He had even bought a gun that year. In 2018, Jennifer re-requested the emergency sole custody of her kids. During the hearing process, the court discovered that Fotis had broken several court orders. Jennifer was given full physical custody of her children, while both parents shared legal custody of the kids. Fotis was granted supervised visits and monitored phone calls. Jennifer and the kids moved to her rented house in New Canaan, 70 miles away from Fotis Dulos. Fotis Dulos had been genuinely hurt by Jennifer's accusation. In an email he sent to Jennifer in 2017, he expressed his concern for his children's well-being. He confessed that their children needed both parents, not just one of them. He had pleaded with Jennifer to reconsider their marriage for the sake of their children. He even stated that they could work as partners and learn to tolerate each other. However, while denying the accusation levied against him by Jennifer, Fotis claimed that Jennifer was the one turning their kids against him. He alleged that the mother of his children called him a psychopath and told the children he did not care about them. He also claimed that Jennifer had bragged about dragging the divorce over a space of 2 years so that she could have the mafia break his legs with a baseball bat. Fotis Dulos also denied ever threatening to kidnap his kids. He admitted to buying a gun, but he had only gotten it for home protection. Fotis Dulos' arguments could have been considered or even believed if the next event did not happen. Jennifer Dulos was last seen on May 24, 2019, at around 8:05 a.m. That day, she had dropped her children off at New Canaan County School and returned home shortly after. The police were alerted of her disappearance by some of her concerned friends. Jennifer had had 2 appointments with her doctor scheduled for 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. in New York City. Jennifer never missed her doctor's appointment, so her friends became worried that she had not shown up. Jennifer Dulos' friends were not the only one who noticed something unusual about Jennifer's disappearance. Her live-in nanny, Lauren Almeida, had been worried when she arrived at Jennifer's New Canaan apartment by 11:30 a.m. and met her Range Rover in the garage. She recalled that Jennifer had planned to take the car to her doctor's appointment instead of her Chevrolet Suburban, which was missing in the garage. Lauren Almeida did not inform the police of Jennifer's disappearance until 7 p.m. By that time, it was glaring that there was something fishy about Jennifer's absence, as she never arrived home that late or left home on her own without informing anybody. After the disturbing reports, the police began their investigations. Some detectives searched Jennifer's New Canaan house. However, they would break the hearts of everyone who cared about Jennifer Dulos. On the floor of the garage, blood splatters were found. And also, blood traces were found on one of the walls in the garage and the door. Blood traces were found on the exterior of the Range Rover as well. Inside the house, blood splatters were only found in the kitchen. And it was not Jennifer's blood alone. It was a mixture of hers and her husband, Fotis Dulos' blood. This made people wonder how Fotis Dulos had murdered his wife. Further investigations by the police showed that Fotis Dulos had been at Jennifer Dulos' apartment on the day she went missing. According to the police, Fotis had gone to Jennifer's home with a bike as the tracks around the house were too small to belong to a car. However, Fotis lay in wait for his wife until she returned from dropping her kids off at school. He then shot her in cold blood, cleaned up the scene, and got rid of the evidence. At about 10:25 a.m., Jennifer's neighbor's CCTV captured the Chevrolet Suburban leaving her home. The police believed that Fotis Dulos had been the one driving the car. The police alleged that he had hidden Jennifer Dulos' body and other items reasonable to the cleaning of the murder scene in the car. After hiding Jennifer's body, Fotis Dulos had abandoned the car 3 miles away from New Canaan. The police were confident that Fotis was a cold-blooded murderer because of his suspicious actions later that day. At around 7:30 p.m., Fotis Dulos and his girlfriend, Michelle Triconis, were caught on tape dumping garbage in trash bins. This could have seemed pretty normal, except they had used 30 trash bins in different spots in Alford Avenue, Hartford. When the police searched the bins, they discovered different incriminating items. In the garbage bags, the police found different cleaning items, some pieces of blood-stained clothes, and used hand gloves. A test was run on the items, and the results confirmed the police's fear. The blood matched Jennifer Dulos, while Fotis DNA was found inside one of the gloves found and on one of the trash bins. Fotis Dulos murdering his wife in cold blood did not cause as much shock as his girlfriend, Triconis, being an accomplice in the crime. Michelle Triconis, a native of Venezuela, was many things. Triconis was a mother, a horse rider, and a former ESPN reporter in South America. But what no one would ever expect her to be was a cold-blooded criminal. Michelle Triconis started seeing Fotis Dulos whilst he was still married to Jennifer Dulos. Her affair with Fotis contributed to the breakdown of his marriage. After Jennifer went missing, the police brought Triconis in for questioning. When asked where she was on one day Jennifer disappeared, she claimed that she had had lunch with Fotis Dulos that afternoon, and also claimed that she and Dulos had gone to one of his properties to clean it up in preparation for a meeting with a client. The police believed that they had been cleaning up Jennifer Dulos' body. The police investigation led them to more videotapes showing Michelle Triconis in a more compromising situation. These tapes led them to find out exactly how Fotis Dulos had committed such a horrific act. Fotis Dulos had carefully planned out his moves, and the police believed he had not done so alone. On May 24, 2019, Fotis drove a Tacoma truck owned by his employee without his permission to New Canaan, Connecticut. In a video captured by a school bus at 7:05 a.m., the Tacoma truck was speeding on the highway towards Wavani Park in New Canaan, the place where Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban will later be found. The police confirmed that a bicycle tire had been found in the boot of the truck. This affirmed the police's speculation that Fotis Dulos had cycled the 3 miles from Wavani Park to Jennifer's apartment in New Canaan. The police believed that Fotis had arrived there earlier before Jennifer. He had attacked in the garage just as she got back. Afterward, he had cleaned up the evidence, bundled Jennifer up in her Chevrolet Suburban, and driven straight to Wavani Park, where he transferred her body into the Tacoma truck. As meticulously as Fotis tried to cover up his tracks, he had left 2 huge pieces of evidence of his presence in the New Canaan house. He had left a sample of his DNA on the doorknob and a mixture of his and Jennifer's blood on the faucet in the kitchen. The police alleged that Fotis had spent hours cleaning the house, hence the neighbor's surveillance footage that showed Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban leaving the house around past 11. The police were even more certain that Fotis Dulos was a cold-blooded murderer when he made another shocking move 5 days after his wife's disappearance. Fotis Dulos took the Tacoma truck out again without permission. This time, his destination showed that Fotis was as guilty as they come. He had driven the truck straight to a local car wash and detail shop. In the surveillance video of the truck, a black SUV was driving right behind him. The driver of the SUV was none other than Michelle Triconis. In the video, Fotis is seen dropping the car off at the car wash. Afterward, he had hopped in beside Triconis in her SUV. The police were convinced that the couple's mission was to rid the car of every bit of evidence. However, they were not so fortunate in their quest. Samples of Jennifer's DNA were found on the passenger seat of the car. As expected, with all the daunting evidence gathered against Fotis Dulos, he became the major suspect in Jennifer Dulos' disappearance. On June 7, 2020, Fotis Dulos was arrested and charged with capital murder, and kidnapping. Fotis Dulos had not been arrested for the murder and kidnapping of Jennifer Dulos until June 2020. You might expect that Fotis should have been arrested earlier, he sure was, but he had not been charged with murder. On June 1st, 2019, Fotis Dulos and Michelle Trocanese were arrested at a hotel in Avon, Connecticut. They were charged with hindering persecution and tampering with evidence. At the time of their arrest, the police did not have enough evidence against the couple. They both pleaded not guilty to the charges. Fotis Dulos has hired Norm Pattis as his attorney. Pattis strongly believed that Jennifer Dulos was dead. Fotis and Trocanese were released, but in September 2019, they were arrested against for tampering with evidence and hindering justice. However, in October 2019, Fotis appeared in court. He requested a dismissal of the charges against him. The judge mentioned that he would look into the case and review arguments from the prosecution and defense. During this period, Jennifer and Fotis Dulos were living with their maternal grandmother. The kids at that time were aged between 8 to 13. Their grandmother was granted temporary custody of the children by the court. Fotis Dulos' Waterloo came in 2020. In January, he was arrested and charged with the capital murder of his ex-wife, while his girlfriend, Michelle Trocanese, was arrested for conspiring to murder. Following the arrest, Michelle Trocanese became estranged from Fotis. In an interview, she admitted that she had made a huge mistake by trusting Fotis. Prior to their arrest in 2020, Trocanese had allegedly moved out of the Fotis Farmington $5 million home with her daughter. Fotis Dulos' former lawyer and friend, Kent Douglas Maini, was also arrested and charged with conspiracy to murder. Maini was taken in at gunpoint. The police believed that he had helped Fotis and Trocanese create an alibi on the morning of Jennifer's disappearance. Also, during that period, Douglas Maini had been accused of spousal rape by his wife. Maini became separated from his wife, and things got worse after he was arrested in connection to Jennifer Dulos' murder. His wife felt her life was in danger. His wife told the South Windsor Police Department that her husband was planning to kill her with the help of his friend, Fotis Dulos. During their investigations, the police discovered that Douglas Maini was a member of an East Granby gun club. A group of local hunters informed the police that they had seen a human grave on a property associated with the club. The police went ahead to search the property in question and indeed found something very suspicious. A shallow grave was found on the secluded property. In the grave, the police found 2 bags of lime and a blue tarp. There was no body found in the grave, but the police believed that it could have been removed. The grave had been discovered with the help of a canine in August 2019. It was unfortunate that despite the arrests, Jennifer's body was not found. Her family was devastated despite the fact that their daughter was about to get justice. In an interview, the family's spokesman confessed that the arrest of the suspects did not give them any sense of closure. He admitted that the incarceration of Jennifer's murderer could never bring her back, so the ache in their hearts could never go away. Fotis Dulos' bond was set at $6 million on January 8, 2020. He was released the next day on bail, but he had to return to court on February 8, 2020. Michelle Trocanese was released on bail as well, while Douglas Maini's bond was set at $2 million. However, it was reduced to over $200,000. He was released on bail on October 19, 2020. Fotis Dulos' fear after his cruel actions caught up with him led to an unfortunate event. On January 28, 2020, Fotis failed to appear in court for an emergency hearing. The judge gave an order for him to be brought to court. On getting to his Farmington home, the police found Fotis in his car unconscious. Fotis apparently could not face the consequences of his actions, so he tried to take his own life. Fotis had poisoned himself with carbon monoxide. He had connected a vacuum cleaner to the exhaust pipe of his SUV and passed it back into the interior of his car. The police had performed CPR on him and restored a faint pulse. He was transported to Yukon Medical Center by ambulance. The center transferred him to Jacobi Medical Center in the Bronx to undergo hyperbaric oxygen therapy. While at the hospital, Fotis children, who were still living with their grandmother, visited their father. It was the first time they saw their father after he was accused of murdering Jennifer. A suicide note was found by the police in Fotis' car. He had written that he was not ready to spend an hour in jail over something he knew nothing about. On January 30th, 2020, Fotis was confirmed dead by the Jacobi Medical Center. After Fotis' death, the police report released showed that Fotis' last girlfriend, Anna Curry, claimed that she had been with him on the day of his emergency hearing. She told the police that she and Fotis had planned to drive to the court together. However, Fotis told her he would prefer that they go separately. Curry admitted that she had been terrified when Fotis' attorney had called her to ask why Fotis was not in court. She had been driving at the time, and she had told him that Fotis should have been in court, to which the attorney replied that Fotis' GPS tracker showed that he was still in his Farmington home. Curry immediately knew that Fotis had done something to harm herself, and she asked the attorney to call 911. After Fotis Dulo's demise, the murder charges against him were dropped. On March 3, 2020, a judge passed a novel prosequi request to the prosecutors. Fotis Dulos was not acquitted of the charges against him, but the case could not continue as he was dead. Novel prosequi is an acknowledgement of that fact. However, it provides the prosecutor with a year to refile the case, or it is permanently dismissed. During the hearing, Fotis Dulo's attorney expressed his interest in clearing his client's name. Norm Pattis believed that Fotis had been framed. He argued that whoever framed Fotis had dumped the bloodied clothes and other incriminating items the police found in front of Fotis' front porch. Fotis, in turn, had innocently set out to dispose of them. Hence, the surveillance footage the police had found. Pattis requested to substitute Fotis Dulo's estate as the defendant. However, Pattis' request has not been considered since. Michelle Triconis had been put on house arrest after she had been accused of conspiring to murder Jennifer Dulos. However, there had not been any significant progress on her case as the COVID pandemic had put the case on hold. Triconis' lawyer, John Sheehan, in an interview, had confessed that there had not been even the slowest progress on Michelle Triconis' case. However, she was scheduled to appear in court on August 6, 2020, while Douglas Mwiney was to appear on June 2, 2020. Both parties still pleaded not guilty to the charges. In an interview, Michelle Triconis addressed all the people who had made up their minds to judge her without even knowing her personally. She admitted that it was possible to misjudge people. However, she could not be the judge as to whether Fotis Dulos was capable of murdering his wife. But she was capable of judging the fact it had been a waste of time trusting Fotis, and rightly so. For years after Jennifer Dulos' disappearance, she still had not been found. Over the years, the police have scourged several places for her body. In 2019, the police had begun their search in Wavani Park, 3 miles away from New Canaan. They had made use of canines and helicopters to carefully search the area. However, when there was no positive result, the search was extended to New York City. The Dulos family owned a property there. The police had searched the property carefully before turning their attention to central Connecticut. The police did not relent in their efforts to find Jennifer as they went ahead to search Hartford, Connecticut. Their search had led to the surveillance tapes showing Fotis Dulos disposing of garbage bags in different trash cans all over the city. This led the police to the garbage processing plant of the city. The search took weeks, but it was worth it, as the police found a lot of useful evidence. The search continued to a special fishing pond in Avon that the Dulos family usually visited. The police proceeded to central Connecticut. They searched houses that belonged to the missing husband's company, for Incorporated. The area covered is estimated to be about 3,000 acres. However, Jennifer Dulos was not found. In August 2021, the search led them to a Farmington house on Mountain Spring Road, which was connected to Jennifer Dulos' husband. The police had chosen to search the house to follow old leads. A renowned expert in finding out unmarked graveyards, Bob Perry was invited by the police. Also, the police brought a septic rank and an excavator to get the best results. Up to this moment, the police have not given any information about finding Jennifer Dulos' body. Despite how horrifying Jennifer Dulos' story was, something good came out of it. In May 2021, the Connecticut State Senate passed a domestic violence bill. The bill was named after Jennifer Dulos and another woman who was a victim of domestic violence, Jennifer Magnano. The bill got almost undisputed support from every member of the Senate. On June 28, 2021, the bill was passed into law by Governor Ned Lamont. The other Jennifer the law was named after, Jennifer Magnano, was also a victim of a very toxic marriage. In 2007, she was murdered in cold blood by her husband, Scott Magnano, in Terryville, Connecticut. Immediately after the gruesome act, Scott Magnano committed suicide in front of their 3 children. Jennifer Dulos' family sadly has not been able to move past their daughter's death. In an interview, the family spokesman expressed how much the family missed Jennifer. He shared that Jennifer's wonderful personality and bright demeanor made even people who never knew personally hurt by her disappearance. Story 4. On August 16, 2016, Pamela Hopp placed a distress call to 911 reporting a burglary in process. Pam Hopp had been a normal, scared older woman who had barely brushed past a cold-blooded death until the investigation surrounding Louis Gumpenberger's death started. Pam Hopp was born on October 20, 1958, in Delwood, Missouri. She was the second child of the Newman family. Pam married Mark Hopp, and their union was blessed with 2 children. In 2001, they started living in Fallon, Missouri. Pam tried out a lot of jobs. Pam Hopp worked as a life administrator for State Farm until 2010 when she stopped working. She began to lay disability claims for leg and back pains. Pam had not exactly been a model citizen, as she had been accused of forging signatures on insurance documents twice. But one thing anyone who met Pam would never imagine she was capable of was cold-blooded murder. At around noon on August 16, 2016, Louis Gumpenberger died after he was shot 5 times by Pam Hopp in her O'Fannin apartment. Louis was a mentally challenged man. He had started battling with mental and physical disabilities after he suffered a car crash in 2005. That day, Pam had called 911 to complain of a robbery. She claimed that Louis had jumped out of a vehicle that was being driven by another driver and attacked her with a knife while she was inside her SUV. Pam, while giving her statement, claimed that she had slapped the knife away from his hand with a karate chop and ran straight into her house to get the Ruger LCR she had kept on her nightstand and shot him 5 times. Pam accused Louis of ordering her to drive him to the bank to withdraw Russ's money. Hopp claimed Louis Gumpenberger attacked her in her driveway. He goes, "We're going to the bank, we're getting Russ's money," and he started getting all agitated and excited. They soon learned Russ was Russ Faria, a man wrongfully convicted for his wife Betsy's 2011 murder. At the crime scene, 9 notes of $100 bills were found on the deceased's body. A handwritten note addressed to the deceased was also found. In the note was an instruction on the things he needed to do at Pam's apartment. First, he had to make sure he got Russ's money. Then he would take Pam into the house, kill her, and make it look like Russ's wife did it. Whoever wanted Pam dead had wanted her life to end in a specific style. Make sure knife is sticking out of neck was his instruction to Gumpenberger. And he was willing to reward Gumpenberger handsomely for his service. He had promised the deceased a whooping sum of $10,000. They arrested Pam Hopp for murder. We had the arrest exclusively on Fox 2. It's video you will never see anywhere else. But had Gumpenberger really been a hired assassin? Or Pam had only taken advantage of a mentally disabled and set him up with a note she had written herself? The truth behind Gumpenberger's death started coming to the limelight when Pam voluntarily went to the O'Fallon Police Department. Her first question, as soon as her interview started, would later form the basis for the arrest. Pam had asked the officer if the interrogation would be recorded because she usually appeared with Chris Hayes, a KTVI news reporter. She even went as far as blaming Hayes for attracting criminals with his reporting. "I blame Chris Hayes. Why does that matter?" Well, it's hard to get into that. I think the idea that we're trying to convey and that we hope to convey at trial. Pam Hopp loved acting as Kathy, a producer of a television show, Dateline NBC. This was in fact how she managed to brutally end Louis Gumpenberger's life. According to the Fallon chief of police and the prosecuting attorney of St. Charles County, Pam had lured Gumpenberger into her home by posing as Kathy. She tricked him into recreating a 911 call, a perfect cover for the hideous crime she was about to perpetrate. After murdering Gumpenberger, she wrote the note that was found on him. The police firmly believed that Kathy was a cold-blooded murderer because of the bulk load of evidence they discovered. First, the $9 bills found on Gumpenberger's body were planted on him by Pam. The 10th note had been found in her dresser, and it shared a sequential serial number with 3 out of the 9 $100 bills. Then the St. Charles County Police reopened a complaint lodged on August 10, 2016, by Carol Alford about a woman who matched Pam's description. The woman had approached Alford to mimic a 911 call for $1,000. The said woman had been driving a car that matched Pam's SUV. Carol Alford wasn't the only one with that kind of complaint. Brent Harleton admitted to the police that Pam had approached him with the same offer. Less than an hour before Pam shot Gumpenberger, she was in his neighborhood. In her interview, she claimed that she had never met Gumpenberger before, but her call record showed that she had been right in front of his door. Further investigations showed that Pam owned the knife she claimed Gumpenberger attacked her with. She had bought the knife alongside other items at a store in O'Fallon, even the note she had planted on him. Pam had a habit of keeping her knife wedged in between her kitchen counter and stove. Similarly, the knife found in her car was lodged in between the passenger seat and the central console. While combing her home, the police found a carpet swatch placed to protect her rug from Gumpenberger's blood. Moreover, the police department did not believe that Louis Gumpenberger could commit the crime Pam accused him of, considering his mental state. Pam's guilt: she shot Gumpenberger as if to protect the rug underneath from blood. On August 23, 2016, Pam Hopp was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. On the day of her arrest, she asked for permission to use the restroom. Pam stabbed her wrist and neck with a ballpoint in an attempt to take her own life. Thankfully, she did not succeed. She appeared in court for the first time on January 30, 2017. Phil Gronwine, St. Charles County Assistant Prosecutor, described Pam's action as a consciousness of guilt. Pam faced a grand jury that convicted her of every charge in December 2016. Pam's bail was set to $2 million. Pam's trial started in 2017. She pleaded not guilty, which made the persecutors gun for the death penalty. Their reason was Pam's arbitrary choice of Gumpenberger as the victim. In June 2019, Pam entered an Alford plea. Her request for a jury trial nullified the death penalty charge. After she pleaded guilty, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in August 2019. After her sentence, Pam contacted her then-husband, Matt Hupp. In a phone call, she told him that she had admitted to killing Louis Gumpenberger because she did not want their family to witness an ugly trial. During the trial, a darker side of Pam was uncovered. A very horrifying truth that sent chills down the spines of the police, judges, and the whole country. In June 2016, Judge Cunningham ruled that the prosecutor could present evidence related to the gruesome end of Betsy Faria in court. This led to the reopening of the Betsy Farias case. Betsy Faria, originally born Elizabeth Cave Meyer, Faria lived in Troy, Missouri. She worked with Pam in State Farm as a life insurance administrator. She lived on Sumac Drive with her husband, Russ Ferris, and her 2 daughters from a previous relationship. In 2010, Betsy was diagnosed with cancer. In October 2011, she realized that the cancer had metastasized to her liver, and she had a few months to live. Before her horrifying death, on December 22, 2011, Betsy had changed the sole beneficiary of her life insurance worth $150,000 to Pam Hoff. She had removed her husband from the sole beneficiary without informing him or her daughters. Pam claimed that Betsy had instructed her to put the money in a trust fund for her daughters until they got older. Later, Pam said that Betsy wanted her to keep the money for herself as she and her had been secret lovers before she died. Betsy's daughter grew salty and dragged Pam to court in 2014. Their attempt to win their mother's life insurance fund from Pam and her husband, Matt, was kicked out of court in 2016. Russ took the State Farm to court in 2016. On December 27, 2011, 5 days after she made Pam Hoff the sole beneficiary of her life insurance fund, Betsy went to the Alvin J. Siteman Cancer Center for a chemotherapy session. Weakened from the treatment, she went to her mother's house. The agreement was that Russ would pick her up from her mother's place, or she would sleep over. Pam suddenly showed up at Betsy's mother's house. She insisted on driving Betsy home. She claimed that she dropped her off at home at around 7 p.m. Betsy's daughter claimed her mother missed her call at approximately 7:21 p.m. By 9:40 p.m., Russ placed a distressed call to 911 that his wife Betsy had committed suicide. Russ had been at his friend Michael Corbin's house watching movies from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. He then drove to Arby's Lake in St. Louis before returning home. The first responders arrived around 10 minutes after Russ's call. One look at Betsy's corpse, and they concluded that it was absolutely ridiculous to assume that she committed suicide. Betsy was found lying on her right side. She had been stabbed 55 times, and her wrist had been cut to the bone. A kitchen knife was also sticking out of her neck. Another knife was found under her pillow. No blood traces or footprints were found around the entrance of the house. Betsy's time of death was confirmed to be between 7:20 p.m. and 9:41 p.m. Fingers were immediately pointed to Russ Faria. Russ became the main suspect. The authorities believed that he had a motive as his wife had denied him access to $150,000. Russ Faria was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife while the real murderer was walking around freely. Russ Faria was arrested a day after Betsy's death. He was the prime suspect because he had reported a case of suicide during his 911 call. However, one look at the body of Betsy, and anyone would know it was far from a suicide. Also, a pair of blood-stained slippers were found in his closet. Russ, this is not suicide. This isn't a random case. I'm telling you, I did not do this. They also said Betsy's best friend, Pam Hobbs, said there were issues in their marriage. Russ was charged in court in January 2012, a day after his wife's burial, for first-degree murder and armed criminal action. While the investigation was still on, Russ had failed a polygraph test woefully. His demeanor was confirmed suspicious and erratic by this police. Also, at Pam's behest, the police searched Betsy's laptop and found a Word document about her fear of losing her life and her husband's life. Russ's bail was set to $250,000. Being unable to pay, he was remanded to the county jail until his trial on November 18, 2013. During an interview with the police, Pam mentioned that Russ had a violent personality and was a heavy drinker, and he had threatened Betsy before. It was easy to pin the murder on him. What more could get a man angry than his wife bypassing him for a whooping sum of $150,000 for her friend? Russ had a motive, and that was all that mattered to Judge Christina Menemeyer. Russ's trial began, and it was an ugly process. His attorney, Joel Schwartz, argued Russ's innocence. He had claimed that Russ had been with his friends most of the night. His friends confirmed that he had been with him. Also, Russ had bought food at a store that night, so it was impossible for him to stab his wife 55 times within that time frame, and there were no bloodstains on his clothes and body. The prosecuting attorney counter-argued that Russ's friends were complicit in his crime as they had lied about him being with them that night, and they had gone to Apstee to buy food and pose as Russ. The presiding judge, Christina Menemeyer, did not allow Joel Schwartz to present evidence implicating Pam as an alternative suspect. Even though Schwartz had strong evidence, like Pam's call history, which showed that she was still around Betsy's apartment 30 minutes after that time she claimed to leave, and Bestie had made her the sole beneficiary of her life insurance fund of $150,000 5 days before her death. Pam Hupp glaringly had a motive, but the judge chose to ignore it. In a closed hearing, she claimed that she put $100,000 of the insurance money into a trust fund for Betsy's daughters, but in a July civil deposition, she admitted that she had kept the money for herself. She didn't want her daughters to have the money, her sisters to have the money. So it was your impression that she wanted you to have the money. Is that right? That's correct. Hupp said she only made it look like Faria's girls would get the money by setting up a trust. Police asking me if I did it, I should do it, it would help their case. A detective of Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, Mike Merkel, reported that a crime scene camera had stopped working and important photographs could not be developed. With all the odds standing against Russ, in November 2013, was convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and an extra 30 years without parole. Just before Faria's second trial, Schwartz finally obtained the photos, which showed no blood trail. I have tried to this day to figure out who within that office specifically sent them to me, and I have been unsuccessful. Fox 2 was in the courtroom for the dramatic moment when Schwartz revealed that he had the evidence police and prosecutors were hiding. Russ was whisked off to the Jefferson City Correctional Center. This was a welcome development in the Rebesti Pam camp. Betsy's sister during the trial had mentioned how horribly pained Russ had been when his wife removed his name from the insurance policy. She testified that he had pressed a pillow against her face, whispering, "This is what it feels like to die." Schwartz, while cross-examining her, reminded the court that the story had been originally narrated by Pam, but as usual, the judge turned a blind eye. Russ's friends had been labeled accessories to murder during this trial. Oblivious to the fact that the persecuting lawyer had implicated them with her closing speech, Russ's friends were lucky that no charges were brought against them. After Russ Faria had spent close to 4 years locked up, in February 2015, his attorney Joel Schwartz appealed the conviction. However, in 2013, Judge Christina Menemeyer rejected Schwartz's request to review the case. In 2014, KTVI collaborated with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch newspaper to revisit the case. Their discoveries brought a lot of shady facts about Betsy Faria's death and who her true killer was. Pam Hupp had contradicted herself twice in an interview with the police. They uncovered how Pam had lied about not being inside the Farias residence. In one of her interviews, she claimed she left as soon as she dropped Betsy off. Also in 2013, the KTVI and St. Louis Post-Dispatch newspapers discovered that Pam had not put Betsy's life insurance money in a trust fund for her daughters, as she had claimed. The fact that Pam was completely forgotten about in the murder case was not only shocking to Schwartz and Russ, but some members of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department had also been confused as to why Pam was not being investigated as a possible suspect in the case. In an interview, an officer had shared how shocked he was when no one was looking in Pam's direction. Everyone had been fixated on Russ. The KTVI and St. Louis Post-Dispatch newspapers shared a testimony of the 911 operative who spoke to Russ on the day he made the call. The operative thought Russ had been genuinely shocked and agitated. Two members of the jury admitted to the jury that the information had been withheld from them. This leaves one wondering why the sheriff's department would deliberately withhold important information that is in Russ's favor. The media, in their article about the Faria murder case, exposed the prosecuting attorney, Askey. Askey had put in quite the work to make sure Russ got locked up. It was alleged that she had been in a relationship with the captain of investigations in the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, Mike Lang. Askey was also in a relationship with one of the lead investigators in the murder case, and as well as a persecuting witness. All this information brought to public notice helped Schwartz get a retrial. In February 2015, the Missouri Court of Appeal transferred the case back to the 45th Circuit Court for rehearing. The trial began on a favorable note for Schwartz as a new judge took over the case. Judge Christina Menemeyer excused herself from the case in June. The new judge, Stephen Omer, granted a new bench trial due to the new evidence presented, and he also released Russ on bond pending the trial. Schwartz was allowed to present incriminating evidence against Pam. Some police officers admitted that Pam had told them that she saw Russ in a car with another man while she was on her way to drop Betsy off. The CSI agent who had handled the crime scene, Amy Butner, said she honestly believed that Russ Faria's bloodstained slippers had been a setup. She thought the blood stain found on the slippers was not a result of stepping into blood. Russ Faria was acquitted of all charges and released on November 7, 2015. In July 2026, he filed a lawsuit against Ashka and 3 deputy sheriffs for ignoring exonerating evidence, fabricated evidence, and failing to investigate the other possible suspect. I was surprised. I knew everybody was trying to get me out, but I didn't know it would be this soon. So I kind of figured I was going. I was just got off the phone trying to call my mom. He's out on a $500,000 bond put up by family members, including cousin Mary Anderson. When asked why Pam Hupp was never investigated as a suspect in the murder case, Ashka admitted that she believed that Pam was physically unable to carry out such a violent crime. Betsy's daughter confirmed that that was the exact response they got from the detectives they approached concerning Pam being a possible suspect in the case. Russ won the case in 2020. He was awarded a $2 million settlement. Joel Schwartz also filed a bar complaint against Ashka. It was rejected by the Office of the Chief Disciplinary Counsel in 2016. Ashley, in a press conference in 2017, announced that she was ready to work with the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Missouri in a review of Betsy Farias. She also requested that the Lincoln County Commissioner carry out an independent investigation into her conduct. She was not found guilty of any misconduct. However, Judge Christina Menemeyer did not share the same luck. The KTVI uncovered some dirty secrets about Judge Menemeyer and her past trials. In January 2027, she was suspended for misconduct in a different case. Judge Menemeyer and Ashka were voted out of office in 2018 for gross misconduct and mishandling the Betsy Farias murder case. In June 2019, Lincoln County appointed a new attorney. Mike Wood, upon resumption, announced that he would be reopening the Betsy Farias murder case. He confessed that the case and the wrong conviction of Russ Ferris had inspired him to take up the job. He announced after Pam Hupp requested an Alford plea for the death of Louis Gumpenberger. In October 2019, Wood requested a case review by the Major Case Squad of Greater St. Louis. Mike Wood was not the only one inspired by Betsy Faria's case. The new Lincoln County Sheriff, Rick Harrell, shared how much the case had influenced his decision to run for the job. In 2020, Wood announced that the COVID-19 pandemic was slowing the trial process. However, he shared that he hoped that the process would start fully soon. In 2021, Pam was interrogated as a suspect in the murder of Betsy Faria for the first time. In July 2021, Wood charged Pam Hupp to court for the first-degree murder of Betsy Faria, an armed criminal action. In an interview, he shared that he was going for the death penalty. He said that he wanted the death sentence for Pam because of the heinousness and depravity of the crime. Betsy Faria had been stabbed 55 times, and her wrist had been sliced off almost completely. Wood condemned the act as animalistic. He charged Pam with court based on the fact that she had motive and the other strong incriminating evidence found. Pam Hupp had been named the beneficiary of a $150,000 life insurance policy a few days before Betsy's horrifying death. Pam had given her word to put the money in a trust fund for Betsy's daughter, according to Betsy's final wishes. Pam had not only lied about putting the money in a trust fund, she claimed the money for herself. She argued that Betsy had asked her to keep the money for herself. Pam, in an interview with some policemen of Lincoln County Sheriff's offices, claimed that she and Betsy had been lovers. In 2021, Pam's company lent her son over $120,000. Pam betrayed her friend in her death. She had a mad crush on me. She really loved me at that time, and it just kept growing from that. Pam claimed Betsy pressured her. She started indicating that she wanted more from me than just, a friend, and as it's just not going to happen. Mike Wood believed that Pam murdered her friend, Betsy Faria. He was convinced that Pam had stabbed Betsy with a kitchen knife while she was asleep on the sofa. Betsy had been weakened from the chemotherapy treatment. After stabbing Betsy 55 times, Pam took off her socks and used it to walk around the room to spread her footprints, in order to give an impression of domestic violence. In the court case filed against Pam, the evidence gathered against Pam, and linking her to the murder of Betsy Faria was included. In the case file, Pam had sent a text message saying she was home to Betsy's phone by 7:20 p.m., but her call records show that she was in fact still within the Farias' residence. Betsy was lying on her side when she was found. According to Wood, this showed that she was murdered by someone she trusted. He believed that Pam had insisted on driving Betsy home despite the fact that she had already arranged transportation so she could take her life. In July 2021, Hupp pleaded not guilty to the crime. In February 2022, a preliminary hearing was set up, but it was postponed indefinitely as Pam's attorney died of a heart attack. In October 2023, Lincoln County announced that Pam's trial would start fully in 2025, and it was going to last around a month. Mike Wood did not only have it in store for Pam Hupp, he also had something in store for the Lincoln County persecutors. Wood believed that the case had been mismanaged right from the beginning. The persecutors showed a gross bias against Russ Faria. Also, during the second trial of Russ, the persecutors had been working hard but not to get justice. They were working to save their own faces. They were fighting to protect their own civil liability rather than finding out the truth. Wood pointed out a destruction order issued in November 2015. The order could have led to the destruction of evidence connected to the case. Russ Faria was lucky it had not been mentioned. Had it been actioned, his release would have been impossible. He's talking about this document under previous Sheriff John Cottle, dated November 2015. It says, "Disposal of property or evidence for the Faria murder case, destruction order." Fox 2 obtained it around the same time Wood's investigator found out. Story 5. In 1988, Heather Hodges and Ignacio Garraus met at a party while attending the University of Northern Colorado. Ignacio was a friendly guy with a great personality, and he immediately caught Heather's attention. It was love at first sight for both of them. Heather had a fun personality with a bit of innocence about her. She was beautiful, with pale skin, red lips, and dark hair. Ignacio found Heather enchanting and even referred to her as his Snow White. After Ignacio asked Heather out on their first date, she was excited. She immediately shared the news with her roommates, and they celebrated her newfound happiness. Heather's friends were thrilled for her because she hadn't really dated before, and they believed this date could be the start of something special. Heather and Ignacio's relationship quickly blossomed into something more serious. Ignacio was attentive, always surprising Heather with her favorite flowers or coffee. His thoughtfulness and consideration made Heather feel loved and appreciated. After graduating from the University of Northern Colorado, Ignacio decided to take their relationship to the next level. He proposed to Heather, and she happily accepted his proposal. However, there was one condition that Heather attached to their engagement. If Ignacio ever cheated on Heather, she would immediately end their marriage, regardless of any apologies or attempts to make amends. This stipulation was a deal breaker for Heather, and she made it clear that she would not tolerate infidelity. Heather and Ignacio married within 1 year of their engagement, and it was a beautiful and joyous occasion. Ignacio became a law enforcement officer at the Greeley, Colorado Police Department, and Heather worked as a supervisor at the local credit union in town. Heather's colleagues and customers at the credit union admired her greatly. She was known for her exceptional skills in providing comfort to the credit union members when there were issues. One coworker even described Heather as wonderful all the way around. 5 years into Heather and Ignacio's marriage, they decided to expand their family. Heather ultimately gave birth to becoming a mother brought Heather joy. Her entire world revolved around her new daughter. Ignacio too proved to be an outstanding father. From the outside, Heather and Ignacio's life appeared to be perfect. In 1997, Heather's father passed away from a heart attack. This tragic event was followed by an even more devastating blow just a few days later when Heather's mother was diagnosed with cancer. Determined to be a dedicated daughter, Heather dedicated herself to taking care of her ailing mother. Over the next several years, she selflessly provided care and support to her mother, who died in 2003. Ignacio proved to be a loving husband and father and helped out more with the couple's daughter, Victoria, and around the house. However, after months of supporting Heather through her grief, Ignacio started to turn his attention to a coworker, Shauna Nelson, a dispatcher at the Greeley Police Department in 2004. She was married to a Wells County Sheriff's deputy named Ken. Shauna and Ken had 2 children, but their marriage was on the rocks. Ken later said things changed between him and Sean after Shauna returned to work after the birth of their second child. Shauna and Ignacio's relationship started as friendly and turned into something more. They began exchanging flirtatious comments and engaging in playful banter. Shauna's compliments caught Ignacio's attention, and she captivated him. Over time, Ignacio's interest grew deeper, and he spent a lot of time with Shauna. Their connection became more than just friendly, and they began to form a deeper emotional bond. As they continued to see each other, the intensity of their feelings grew. Their emotions shifted from playful flirtation to something more passionate and intimate. Despite their marital status, they found themselves unable to resist the pull of their attraction. Ignacio and Shauna's relationship was the talk of the town, but Heather remained oblivious to the affair. Despite everyone being aware of the situation, no one felt comfortable disclosing the truth to Heather. As a result, Shauna and Ignacio's relationship intensified, while Heather remained in the dark. Shauna found out she was pregnant and excitedly shared the news with Ignacio. However, Ignacio did not take the news well and started to question whether the baby was, in fact, his and not Shauna's husband, Ken. Shauna assured Ignacio that her husband had a vasectomy after their second child, eliminating the possibility of Ken being the father of the child. Knowing that he would be facing serious consequences if Heather found out about Shauna's pregnancy, Ignacio became nervous. He did not want this baby and desperately sought a solution. With Shauna's agreement, he convinced her to terminate the pregnancy and drove her to the procedure. As months and years passed, Heather remained oblivious to her husband's affair with Shauna. However, as time went on, Shauna became impatient and decided to confront Heather. One day, she followed Heather to the grocery store, accompanied by her best friend and partner in Michelle Moore. Shauna and Michelle followed Heather discreetly around the store, observing her every move. Heather, oblivious to their presence, engaged in a conversation with a friend on her phone. Eventually, Shauna approached Heather in the store and unleashed a tirade of insults and accusations. She called Heather names and hurled hurtful words at her. The incident at the grocery store left Heather deeply shaken. She decided it was time to confront Ignacio, as she recognized Shauna from his work Christmas parties and knew she was his co-worker at the police department. When Heather asked Ignacio why Shauna, who had always been nice to her, would confront her in the grocery store, spewing nasty words, Ignacio explained to Heather that Shauna had a crush on him, but that Heather had nothing to worry about. Ignacio told Heather he would tell Shauna to stop bothering her. He confronted Shauna and told her to leave Heather alone, and Shauna got very angry with him. However, Shauna did not stop harassing Heather. One time, Shauna showed up at Heather and Ignacio's house demanding to see Ignacio. Although Heather didn't want to think there was something more between the relationship of her husband and his coworker, she couldn't help but wonder what he was really up to. Shauna confided in one person at the county dispatch center about the affair she was having with Ignacio. She expressed deep feelings for Ignacio, stating she was in love with him more than anyone else she had ever met. However, Shauna also expressed her frustration that Heather, Ignacio's wife, stood in the way of their relationship. According to this supervisor, Shauna revealed that she went to the shooting range to relieve her frustrations. While shooting at the targets, Shauna would pretend they were Heather. Despite Shauna and Ignacio's years-long affair, Ken, Shauna's husband, had no idea what was going on until he read Shauna's journal, which detailed her relationship with Ignacio. Wanting to stay together for the sake of their children, Ken did not leave Shaun when he found out about her cheating. Shauna was not the only person Ignacio was having an affair with, as Shauna herself was aware of Ignacio's relationship with another woman. This knowledge prompted Shauna to keep Ignacio on a short leash, as she was determined to maintain her position as the sole woman in his life. She threatened to tell Heather everything if he ever left her. Her obsession with Ignacio was growing stronger. In July 2005, Shauna took a step further to solidify her place in Ignacio's life when she got a tattoo on her leg with his family name. Shauna had developed an unhealthy obsession with Ignacio, and it began to escalate to the point where she started stalking him. If Heather and Ignacio decided to take their daughter Victoria to a restaurant, Shauna and her family would make sure to show up. Ignacio could tell that Shauna's behavior was becoming increasingly concerning, but he continued to engage in an affair with her. When Shauna found out she was pregnant with Ignacio's baby a second time, she told him there was no way she was ending the pregnancy. She wanted this baby. In March 2006, Shauna gave birth to her and Ignacio's son Christian. Because Shauna was still married to Ken and Ignacio's wife had no idea he had a baby with his coworker, Ken offered to raise Christian as if Shauna would stay married to him, and she agreed. During the summer of 2006, while Heather was out one day, a woman approached her with shocking news. The woman informed Heather that Shauna Nelson had given birth to Ignacio's baby. This revelation left Heather in disbelief and confusion. Upon returning home, Heather confronted Ignacio about the child, demanding answers. Ignacio once again lied to his wife, attempting to conceal his affair with Shauna, and Heather continued to believe in Ignacio. One night in December 2006, Heather woke up to find Ignacio missing. She sat up and waited for him to get home. When Ignacio finally returned, Heather wasted no time in confronting him. Instead of lying like he had in the past, Ignacio made a choice to tell Heather the truth. Ignacio admitted to Heather that he had been out with Shauna that night. He went on to disclose that the affair had been going on for years, unbeknownst to her. Additionally, Ignacio told her about Shauna's 2 pregnancies and that she had recently given birth to a son. After Ignacio confessed to his affair with Shauna to Heather, Heather followed through on what she had said she would do if Ignacio cheated. She ended their relationship and kicked him out of the house. However, Heather's strong desire to keep her family intact led her to call Ignacio back the next day. Despite Heather's initial disbelief and anger, she did not want to break up the family and feared that Victoria would be raised in a broken home. When Heather spoke to Ignacio, she let him know that she knew he was in love with her and that she loved him back. Heather expressed her desire to keep their marriage intact and said she did not intend to file for divorce. However, Heather made it clear that she was not ready to jump back into their marriage immediately. Instead, Heather presented Ignacio with several conditions to be fulfilled before considering taking him back. One of the conditions was that Ignacio needed to an STD test. In addition to getting an STD test, Heather also recommended that Ignacio see a counselor. She believed that counseling could help them navigate the challenges of rebuilding their marriage and addressing any underlying issues that may have led to the infidelity. Furthermore, Heather asked Ignacio to give up his parental rights to Shauna's baby. Lastly, Heather requested that Ignacio end his relationship with Shauna. Ignacio was eager to save his marriage and agreed to all the conditions Heather proposed. He knew that he had wronged her and was willing to make amends. Ignacio called Shauna and informed her that he was ending their affair. While on the phone with Shauna, Heather, standing nearby, listened to the entire conversation. Moments after Ignacio hung up, a text message arrived on Heather's cell phone. The message contained a picture of Shauna and Ignacio's son, and underneath it were the words, "Iggs, flesh and blood." Shauna's outrage was fueled by the fact that Ignacio had ended their relationship and decided to remain with Heather. She felt betrayed and abandoned, and her anger boiled over. As a result, she began speaking openly about suing Ignacio for child support, seeking financial retribution for their son Christian. By the start of 2007, Ignacio and Heather were in the midst of repairing their marriage after Ignacio's infidelities. Despite the challenges they faced, the couple was determined to rebuild their relationship and make things work. However, despite Ignacio's efforts to put an end to his affair with Shauna, she continued to harass Heather. The harassment became so bad that Ignacio and Heather had to take drastic measures to protect their family and property. They began parking Heather's car in the garage instead of out on the street, fearing that Shauna might damage their vehicle. Additionally, the couple sought legal assistance and had an attorney send Shauna a formal notice informing her to stay away from Ignacio, Heather, and their daughter, Victoria. The notice contained clear instructions to cease any harassment or intimidation. Despite the warnings and consequences, Shauna refused to relent. She continued to harass Heather through text messages, emails, and voicemails, taunting her with nasty and hurtful words. On January 23, 2007, just after 6 p.m., Heather was leaving work at the credit union. She was looking forward to going home and spending the night with her daughter. However, Heather's peaceful evening was suddenly disrupted as she exited the building with her coworkers. As they worked on their vehicles in a dark parking lot, the group was approached by a dressed in black, wearing a Halloween mask and brandishing a gun. The gunman was specifically focused on Heather, while others in the group attempted to hide. Pointing the weapon at Heather's head, the gunman told her to get down on her knees. Then, before pulling the trigger, the gunman said, "You ruined my life," and then shot Heather 2 times, point-blank range execution style, in the head. After shooting Heather, the gunman ran into a red pickup truck parked nearby and sped away. As Heather's shooting unfolded, her coworkers and other witnesses in the parking lot called 911. Minutes after Heather was shot, paramedics arrived on site, but their efforts to save her life were ultimately futile. The gunshot wounds to her head had caused fatal injuries, and Heather was pronounced dead at the scene. When police officers arrived at the parking lot to secure the crime, they discovered that the shooting victim was their coworker Ignacio's wife. Recognizing Heather as the victim, the officers contacted Ignacio and instructed him to go to the hospital immediately. Ignacio sped through the hospital's hallways to reach Heather's trauma room. However, as he approached, a doctor stopped him to deliver devastating news. The doctor informed him that it was too late and Heather had passed away. The news hit Ignacio hard, and he realized he would have to break the devastating news to their 9-year-old daughter, Victoria. Telling Victoria that her mother was gone was the hardest thing Ignacio ever had to do. He recalled that they spent a long time sitting together, hugging and crying inconsolably. While Ignacio was digesting the news of Heather's death, back at the crime scene, witnesses were sharing their accounts of the murder with the police. One witness reported seeing the shooter appear unexpectedly before quickly disappearing in a pickup truck. Another witness suggested that the shooter might have been a woman based on the way they ran. During the investigation, a name that had come up concerning Heather's harassment was Shauna Nelson. Someone who knew about Ignacio's affair mentioned Shauna could have been responsible for Heather's shooting. The police officers at the crime scene were already familiar with Shauna and her husband, Ken, as she was a dispatcher and a police officer. They knew Ken owned a car similar to the one the shooter was driving. With the evidence mounting against Shauna, the police issued an APB on their radios for both her and the red pickup truck she was believed to be driving. Ken Nelson, Shauna's husband, was working his shift that night and patrolling in his police car when he heard an alert for his wife and truck over the radio. He immediately began searching for his wife. Within 20 minutes, Ken located his wife driving his vehicle near their home. Shauna told Ken that she had been running errands. However, Ken became suspicious when he saw that Shauna was not wearing shoes, even though it was January in Colorado. Even more concerning for Ken was that she was dressed in his socks, underwear, and pants. After stopping his wife, Ken called in the sighting and requested assistance. Police officers soon arrived and took Shauna into custody. The authorities began investigating to determine if she had any involvement in Heather's murder. Investigators discovered a pair of shoes with Shauna's DNA on them, located less than 1,000 feet from the crime scene. Furthermore, the investigators recovered 2 shell casings from a .40 caliber Glock Model 22 from the parking lot where Heather was shot. The weapon was of the same type used by Ken for his work. This coincidence further strengthened the case against Shauna. The investigators also stumbled upon a Halloween mask hidden under the seat of Ken's red pickup truck that closely resembled the mask worn by the suspect in the Heather's shooting. During their search of Shauna's home, investigators discovered a fully drawn bathtub that appeared to be waiting for her. This tub led some to believe that perhaps Shauna was planning to clean herself of any blood spatter that could have been left behind after the shooting. Following her arrest, Shauna was subjected to thorough testing, and her clothing and hands were swabbed for gunshot residue. These test results came back positive. With mounting evidence, Shauna was eventually charged with first-degree murder. Even though shell casings matched the weapon used to murder Heather, the night Heather was killed, Ken handed his service weapon over to his supervisor, and the actual gun used to murder Heather had never been found. Yet because Ken Nelson stopped Shauna after the murder but didn't detain her, he was charged with tampering with evidence and accessory to first-degree murder. During her interrogation by the detectives, Shauna stated that she went out for errands and pulled on dirty clothes from the hamper, explaining why she was dressed in her husband Ken's clothing. Shauna mentioned when she got to the store, she realized she had forgotten her wallet and drove home. When asked about Heather's murder, she denied any knowledge of it and denied playing a part in it. Ignacio was also questioned extensively by the police after Heather was murdered but was cleared of all suspicion. In February 2008, Shauna's trial began for the murder of Heather Garrows. Shauna pleaded not guilty to the charges. During the trial, the state argued that Ignacio was not the first married officer with whom Shauna had an affair. However, they contended that her fixation with Ignacio was the motivating factor behind her murdering Heather Garrows. The state struck an agreement with Shauna's former best friend, Michelle Moore, who used to accompany Shauna when she taunted Heather Garrows in public. Michelle agreed to testify against Shauna in exchange for reduced sentencing. During her testimony against Shauna, Michelle discussed how much Shauna hated Heather Garrows and even admitted to helping plan Heather's murder. Shauna took the stand in her defense during the trial, denying the accusations against her. She adamantly denied telling anyone that she fantasized about killing Heather Garrows or picturing her during target practice. Additionally, she denied having any involvement in the actual killing of Heather, stating that she was on her way to a liquor store at the time of the shooting. During her testimony, Shauna presented an alternative theory as to who may have been responsible for Heather's death. She claimed that her best friend Michelle was obsessed with her and wanted to make her happy by getting rid of Heather. However, when Michelle was called as a witness and cross-examined, she denied Shauna's claims. At the trial, the state alleged that Shauna was dressed in her husband's clothing items during the shooting because she intended to set him up for murder. According to the prosecution, by getting rid of Heather, Ignacio's wife and Ken, her husband, Shauna, and Ignacio would be free to live there happily ever after. After the jury was released to deliberate, it only took them 5 hours to return a verdict. They found Shauna Nelson guilty of first-degree murder. The judge addressed Shauna and told her she deserved every day of the sentence she received. Michelle Moore, Shauna's former best friend, was sentenced to 9 years in prison for her involvement in the planning of Heather's murder after testifying against Shauna. Ken Nelson resigned from the police department after Shauna was convicted of murder and filed for divorce. Following Shauna's guilty verdict, Ken moved out of state with his children, including Shauna's son Christian, who she had with Ignacio. However, after some time, Ken moved back to Colorado, expressing hope that one day the children would be able to visit Shauna in prison. Regardless of the circumstances, Ken believed that no matter what, Shauna had always been a loving and great mother. The charges against Ken were eventually dropped. Heather's loved ones are relieved that Shauna is behind bars. They believe that justice has been served, and they hope Shauna continues to reflect on the pain she caused Heather every day for the rest of her life. Shauna's selfish actions took Heather away from her family and deprived her daughter, Victoria, of her mother's. Unfortunately, in 2015, when Victoria was 17 years old, she lost her life in a car accident. Tragically, she lost control of her vehicle and struck a tree, ending her life. Story 6. In 1995, Mansfield, Texas, located just outside Fort Worth, was a town with a population of approximately 8,000. However, during this period, the city was facing growing problems similar to those plaguing nearby Fort Worth, including gang and drug-related crimes. One teenager growing up in Mansfield in 1995 was Adrienne Jessica Jones. Adrienne Jessica Jones was a remarkable young woman who left a mark on her community. At 16, she captivated the hearts of everyone around her with her beauty and exceptional qualities. Her dedication to her studies, strong work ethic, and passion for sports made her a role model for many. In 1995, Adrienne Jessica Jones was a 16-year-old junior at Mansfield High School. From the moment she set foot on campus, she instantly became a beloved figure. Her classmates and teachers admired her for her kindness, intelligence, and infectious spirit. Adrienne Jessica Jones thrived academically. She consistently excelled in the classroom, taking advanced honors courses that challenged her to excel. Despite her busy schedule, Adrienne dedicated at least 2 hours of study time each night to ensure her success. Her hard work paid off as she consistently achieved high grades. After graduating from Mansfield High School, Adrienne had big plans to become a vet and help animals. In addition to excelling academically, Adrienne possessed impressive athletic abilities. She was a girls' soccer team member and demonstrated remarkable skill and dedication on the field. However, an unfortunate injury during a game forced her to withdraw from the team temporarily. Instead of losing her passion for sports, she joined the girls' cross-country team. This decision to join the cross-country team allowed Adrienne to maintain an active lifestyle and helped her get into better shape. Adrienne Jessica Jones embraced the new challenge and worked tirelessly to improve her physical fitness. Her determination and dedication paid off, as she quickly emerged as a key cross-country team member. While pursuing her academic and athletic endeavors, Adrienne Jessica Jones also managed an impressive workload outside the classroom. In addition to her studies, she worked 20 hours a week at a local fast food restaurant, Golden Fried Chicken. Adrienne thrived on attention, especially from the teenage boys around Mansfield. One of her closest friends referred to her as a big flirt. She would spend at least 2 hours a day meticulously applying her makeup, ensuring that she looked perfect. Like most teenagers, Adrienne tested her parents' boundaries despite her good nature. She had 2 younger brothers, and her parents were particularly protective of her, as Mansfield was undergoing changes and there was more crime in the area. Her parents set a strict curfew for her on weekends, a little past 9 p.m. to ensure her safety. If Adrienne informed her parents of her plans, such as visiting a theme park or watching a movie, she had to present them with a ticket stub as proof. Additionally, to prevent her from sneaking out, Adrienne's father decided to nail her bedroom window shut. Although it was not a common occurrence, there were a few times when she left her house in the middle of the night to meet up with her friends. On Sunday, December 3rd, 1995, Adrienne received special permission from her parents to stay up late in order to have a telephone conversation with her Tracy Smith. Tracy was out of town with his parents for the weekend, but Adrienne was eager to talk to him. However, during the phone call, Adrienne's mother overheard her daughter tell Tracy that there was another call coming in. When Adrienne's mother asked her the caller's identity, Adrienne replied that it was David from her cross-country team. According to Adrienne, David seemed to be upset about something. The following morning, Adrienne's family woke up and got ready for work as usual. However, Adrienne's mother became concerned when she heard Adrienne's alarm going off in her bedroom. Worried about why Adrienne didn't shut off her alarm, her mom went to check on her. However, when Adrienne's mom entered the bedroom, Adrienne was nowhere to be found, and her bed was still made. It didn't look like anyone had slept in it the night before. Adrienne's mother tried to remain calm when she realized that her 16-year-old daughter had gone missing. Initially, she entertained the possibility that Adrienne had embarked on a morning run, but this notion was quickly discarded upon finding her daughter's running shoes lying on the floor in the bedroom. In the past, Adrienne had occasionally sneaked out of the house in the middle of the night to meet up with friends. However, Adrian had never stayed out all night before, causing her mother concern. Her parents contacted the police, worried about their daughter, not knowing that miles away, a man had made a gruesome discovery on his farm. At approximately 7 a.m. on Seton Road in Grand Prairie, Texas, about 10 miles from Mansfield, a man stumbled upon a distressing discovery. While walking to his mailbox, he noticed that the gate to his property had been knocked down. Intrigued, the man ventured onto the farm, where an unexpected sight awaited him. Initially, the man mistook the lump on the ground for roadkill. However, as he approached closer, he realized that he was looking at something far more sinister. The lifeless body of a deceased teenage girl lay before him. After discovering the deceased body on the farmland, the man promptly called the police. When the police arrived at the scene, they noticed a chilling sight. The teenager had been shot twice, with gunshot wounds evident on her left cheek and her forehead. Clearly, this was an execution-style killing. Furthermore, the police officers observed that the teenager had sustained severe injuries to the head. In addition to gunshot wounds and head injuries, the police officers noticed that the teenager was covered in scrapes and bruises all over her arms and legs. These injuries were the result of her running through the barbed wire gate at the front of the farm. She had put up a desperate fight for her life. Even more disturbingly, the teenager was dressed in night clothes. It was as if she had intended to bed, but her life took a tragic turn. The officers wondered if there was any connection to gang violence or drugs, considering the execution-style nature of the killing. After the discovery on the farm of the murdered teenager's body, the Grand Prairie Police took immediate action and sent out a teletype to all area agencies. This teletype contained the basic description of the young girl's body, including her approximate age range, height and weight, and other physical descriptions. The intent was to share this information and raise awareness, hoping another agency might have a missing person matching the victim in Grand Prairie. It was only a matter of time before the Mansfield police contacted the Grand Prairie officers. Through their investigation, the Mansfield police were able to identify the murdered teenager as Adrian Jones. Once the police identified the deceased teenager in Grand Prairie as Adrian, the next step was to notify her worried parents about the tragic turn of events. When the police told Adrian's mother her daughter had been killed, she fell apart. Because Mansfield was a small town, it wasn't long before the news of Adrian's murder reached her classmates and friends at Mansfield High School. As news of Adrian's death spread throughout the halls, classes were stopped, and Adrian's peers cried with one another. The people of Mansfield were on edge after the discovery of the murdered body of Adrian Jones in a field. Theories were swirling about what might have led to her tragic death. One prevalent idea was that she was somehow involved in drugs. Others wondered if there was possibly a serial killer lurking in their midst. Adrian's parents reported to the police the last time they had seen their daughter. Her mother provided details regarding a phone call Adrian had with her boyfriend Tracy, as well as another teenager, David, who called in while she was on the phone. According to the mother, one of Adrian's younger brothers heard the sound of a car engine outside the house sometime after midnight. Upon looking outside, the brother observed a pickup truck leaving the scene. The police were determined to find out who this David was who called Adrian on the night she was murdered. In an effort to gather more information, they turned to Adrian's cross-country coach. Adrian's coach mentioned that there was a team member named David Graham. However, the coach expressed surprise upon learning that David would have been calling Adrian, as she had never had any reason to believe that Adrian and David had interacted. David Graham was an all-American teenager. At 7, after seeing his first air show, David told his father he wanted to become an Air Force pilot. From that moment on, he dedicated himself to achieving his dream. At Mansfield High School, David was popular and well-liked by his peers. He had a natural charisma and was always up for a good time. Many girls had caught his eye, but he was taken by a high school senior named Diane Zamora. Diane stood out from the crowd. She shared David's desire to enter the military one day and actively pursued her aspirations. In the days after Adrian's murder, the police conducted interviews with David Graham. David admitted that he had known Adrian from their time together on the cross-country team, but he insisted that their relationship had never progressed beyond acquaintances. During the interview, the police questioned David about whether he contacted Adrian on the night she was killed. He adamantly denied the allegation, stating that he had been at home studying with his girlfriend, Diane Zamora. The police conducted a thorough investigation of David, considering him as a suspect in the murder of Adrian. As part of this investigation, they sought information from Adrian's friends to determine if she had ever spoken about David. One of her closest friends informed the police that she knew about Adrian's innermost secrets, but had never discussed David with her. Additionally, when the police accessed Adrian's phone book, they noticed that David's number was not written down. This discovery further strengthened their belief that David had had nothing to do with Adrian's murder and never even offered him a polygraph test. Consequently, the police removed David from their list of suspects. After David, the next suspect police looked into in connection to the murder of Adrian was her boyfriend, Tracy Smith. However, the police were able to confirm Tracy's alibi as he was out of town with his family on the night of the murder. Additionally, Tracy submitted to and passed a polygraph examination, which further supported his innocence. When Tracy Smith's interview with the police, he provided them with the name of a person who he believed should be investigated in relation to the murder of Adrian. Tracy stated that on the night of Adrian's murder, she had informed him of someone named Brian, who had called while they were on the phone. The police initiated an investigation into the identity of Brian. Their investigation revealed that the person in question was a local teenager named Brian McMillian. During the investigation of Brian McMillian, the police made a discovery. They learned that Brian used to work in a pharmacy near a restaurant where Adrian used to work, and Brian had developed a fascination with Adrian. Brian would frequently visit the restaurant to catch a glimpse of her. However, Adrian grew tired of his constant presence and resorted to hiding in the back whenever she saw him coming. The police interviewed Brian McMillian concerning the murder of Adrian Jones and initially denied any knowledge of her. However, Brian later admitted to knowing her. During the interview, one officer asked Brian if he had spoken with Adrian on the night of her murder, to which he claimed not to remember. According to Brian, on the night of the murder, he had been drinking because he was depressed and lonely. One officer asked Brian if he had visited Adrian's house the night she was killed, to which he admitted he might have. At the end of the interview, the police officers asked Brian's father if Brian could take a polygraph test, but Brian's father said no. 1 week after Brian's interview with the police, the officers stormed his house armed with guns. It was a decision that was made with careful consideration, as there was uncertainty surrounding whether Brian could be armed at the time of his arrest. The police had reason to believe that Brian might have a weapon, and they wanted to take all necessary precautions to ensure their safety, as well as that of everyone involved. After Brian was arrested for the murder of Adrian, many individuals came forward to express their support on his behalf. His friends described him as gentle and nonviolent. Additionally, Brian's father confirmed that he was at home the entire night that Adrian was killed and never left the house. Brian spent 3 weeks in jail, including missing Christmas and New Year's, awaiting further investigation and legal proceedings. During this time, the district attorney's office arranged for Brian to take a polygraph test, which he passed with flying colors. With this outcome, the district attorney's office was left with little other evidence to connect Brian to Adrian's murder and released him from custody. 9 months into the investigation into Adrian's murder, The police in Mansfield, Texas finally got the break they needed, and it came from Annapolis, Maryland, where Diane Zamora was attending the Naval Academy. According to the officers from the Naval Academy, Diane Zamora had confessed to some of her fellow cadets that back home in Mansfield, Texas, she and her boyfriend, David Graham, had murdered a girl named Adrienne Jones. The police officers from Mansfield went to Annapolis, Maryland, to interview Diane right away. During the interview, Diane denied making any such admission. However, the Naval Academy decided to suspend her and send her home as the matter was looked into. Because the police couldn't get any information out of Diane, they traveled to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to question David Graham at the Air Force Academy. When the police interviewed David, he said he didn't know why Diane would make up a story about killing Adrienne Jones. However, as the interview progressed, David started to crack and asked to write a statement. In 4.5-page confession letter, David laid out all the details about how he and his girlfriend Diane planned to murder Adrienne Jones. In the letter written by David, he described a cross-country event where he decided to offer to drive Adrienne home in November 1995. During the ride, they parked in an elementary school parking lot and had intercourse. David admits that he felt a deep sense of guilt after this encounter. The reason for his guilt was simple. He loved his girlfriend Diane so much and knew that his actions would cause her immense pain. One evening, as David was helping Diane study for her SATs, an argument erupted between them. Unable to contain the guilt any longer, David decided to confess his infidelity. Breaking down in tears, he sat on the couch and told Diane that he had not remained faithful to her. He then went on to describe how he had hooked up with Adrienne. After David confessed to Diane that he had been unfaithful to her with Adrienne, Diane was inconsolable. The betrayal shattered her heart, leaving her feeling deeply hurt and enraged. Diane's anger boiled over, and she lashed out, arguing with David and screaming at him. She wished he were dead, and she felt intense hatred towards Adrienne. Diane's emotions were overwhelming, and she struggled to make sense of what had happened. David admitted he told Diane he would do whatever she wanted to save their relationship. He said that he and Diane came to the conclusion there was only one way to make their love right again: murder Adrienne Jones. David wrote in his confession letter that on December 3rd, he called Adrienne Jones and asked her to sneak out of her house late at night to talk. He requested Adrienne to keep the meeting confidential and between the two of them. Initially, David stated that he intended to get Adrienne alone, break her neck, and then dispose of her body by dumping it into a lake. At 2:30 a.m., David picked up Adrienne in his car. Diane, who was hiding in the hatchback, accompanied them. Once David reached a secluded spot 10 miles out of town, he turned off the highway onto Seaton Road. David stopped on the side of the road, and Adrienne made a subtle adjustment to her seat, creating the impression that she and David were about to engage in an intimate moment. However, David had secretly summoned Diane from the trunk. Diane emerged from the rear of the vehicle and made her way around to the front of the car. As she approached, she confronted Adrienne, seated in the passenger seat. After Diane confronted Adrienne, Diane hit her in the head with a weight from David's gym set. Despite being grievously wounded, Adrienne did not die. Somehow, Adrienne managed to crawl out David's car window and escape. David and Diane panicked, so David grabbed his Makarov 9mm weapon and ran after Adrienne. Adrienne was very hurt, and because of her head wound, didn't make it far and collapsed in a field nearby. When David caught up to her, he shot Adrienne 2 times before walking back to his car. Once Adrienne was deceased, the first words Diane and David said to one another were, "I love you." After David confessed to murdering Adrienne, the police returned to question Diane, who had a confession statement of her own. David and Diane were arrested and charged with capital murder. However, both would later recant their confessions, with David claiming that Diane had committed the crime by herself and Diane alleging that David had acted alone. In 1998, Adrian's mother filed a petition with the court requesting that the death penalty be removed as an option for David and Diane. Diane's trial began in February of that year. Several witnesses testified in court that Diane did not show any remorse for murdering Adrian Jones. After deliberation, the jury found Diane guilty of capital murder on February 17th. As a result of the guilty verdict, Diane received an automatic sentence of life imprisonment with parole eligibility in 40 years. David Graham was also found guilty of the murder of Adrian Jones. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 40 years.